The Earthling was an ordinary person, living a simple life on a small, peaceful planet. Every day felt the same: working, eating, and spending time with family. He didn't know it, but this quiet life was about to change forever. The planet he called home was far away from the chaos of the universe, a place where nothing dangerous had ever happened, but that was all about to end. It started with strange things happening in the sky. First, there were bright lights, flashes of colors that no one had ever seen before. They weren't like anything the Earthling had ever seen. People whispered about the lights, calling them omens or signs of something big coming. But the Earthling didn't believe the rumors. He thought they were just stories, nothing more. Then came the storms. The weather, which had always been calm and predictable, began to change. Strange winds howled through the trees, and rain fell in strange patterns. The Earthling saw a huge storm on the horizon, one that seemed to be moving faster than anything he had seen before. The sky became a dark red, like the sun itself was angry. He could feel something was wrong, but he didn't know what. A few days later, he was walking home from the market when he saw something strange. In the middle of the road stood a figure, tall and cloaked in shadows. The person's face was hidden, but the Earthling could feel their presence, a deep and powerful energy that made him stop in his tracks. The stranger turned to him and spoke, in a calm, quiet voice. "The Void Kings are coming," the stranger said. The Earthling didn't understand. Who were the Void Kings? What did they want? Before he could ask, the stranger continued. "They are ancient rulers, and they are returning. The universe is about to change, and you are part of that change." The Earthling felt his heart race. He had heard stories of ancient beings, powerful and evil, but he never thought they were real. He was just an ordinary person. What could he do to stop them? The stranger stepped forward and handed him a small glowing stone. "This will guide you," the stranger said. "You must leave your world, for the time to act is now. The Void Kings are coming, and only you can stop them." The Earthling felt confused and scared. He had no idea what was going on or how he could possibly help. His life had been simple, with no danger, no excitement. Now, everything was different. The quiet life he had always known seemed to be slipping away. With a heavy heart, the Earthling looked at the glowing stone in his hand. It was warm, and he could feel the power in it. The stranger didn't wait for him to respond. Without a word, they turned and walked away, disappearing into the shadows. The Earthling stood still, unsure of what to do. The storm was getting closer, and the world around him seemed to be changing in ways he couldn't understand. He knew one thing for sure: nothing would ever be the same again. The time had come for him to leave everything behind and face whatever dangers lay ahead. And so, with fear in his heart, the Earthling began his journey into the unknown, unaware of the challenges, battles, and mysteries he would face. The Void Kings were coming, and he was the only one who could stop them. The Earthling's journey took him far from his home, into the endless stretch of space. At first, everything seemed strange and terrifying. The stars were brighter here, and the silence of space was louder than anything he had ever known. His heart raced as he stared at the dark void around him. He had left behind his family, his planet, everything he had ever known. Now, he was alone in a vast, unknown universe. The weight of it all was overwhelming. As the days passed, the Earthling began to wonder if he had made the right choice. He was just an ordinary person. What could he possibly do to stop the Void Kings? He was no hero. The strange stone given to him by the mysterious figure was now a constant reminder of his mission. It pulsed softly in his pocket, almost as if it were alive, but still, he had no idea what to do with it or how it would help him. It wasn't long before the Earthling's ship encountered trouble. A sudden storm of cosmic debris hit his ship, causing it to shake violently. The Earthling struggled to regain control, but it was useless. He was headed straight for a nearby asteroid field, where the sharp rocks would tear the ship apart. Just when it seemed like all hope was lost, a blinding light appeared in front of him. A ship, sleek and fast, appeared from nowhere, effortlessly pulling him away from danger. The Earthling's ship was pulled into the unknown ship's hangar, and the moment it landed, the doors opened. A woman, tall and strong, stepped inside. She had dark eyes full of fire and determination. Her face was hardened, but there was something kind in her gaze. She looked at the Earthling and smiled. "You're lucky we found you," she said. "If we hadn't, you'd be space dust by now." The Earthling was in shock, not knowing how to react. "Who are you?" "I'm Captain Lyra," she said, "and we've been watching you. You're the one who can stop the Void Kings, aren't you?" The Earthling didn't know how to respond. How did she know that? I'm just an ordinary person," he stammered. "I don't know what I can do." Lyra smiled again. "You have the power. We all know that. But what you don't know is that you're not alone. There's a rebellion, fighters from all over the galaxy who have been working to stop the Void Kings. We've been searching for you." The Earthling felt his heart race. A rebellion. He hadn't expected that. He had thought he was the only one, a lone warrior facing impossible odds. But there were others. He wasn't alone. Lyra led him into the ship's control room, where a group of rebels were gathered around a table covered in star maps and holographic displays. They all turned to look at him, their eyes full of curiosity. One of them, a tall man with a scar on his cheek, nodded in greeting. "We've been waiting for you," he said. "The Void Kings are getting closer, and we need all the help we can get." The Earthlings stood there, overwhelmed by the situation. These people believed in him. They believed that he could help them defeat the Void Kings. But how? He had no training, no weapons, no experience. He was just an ordinary person, thrown into an extraordinary situation. Lyra placed a hand on his shoulder. "Don't worry," she said softly. "We'll teach you. You'll learn to fight, to use the power within you. Together, we can defeat them." For the first time since leaving his planet, the Earthling felt a spark of hope. He was no longer alone. He had found allies, people who understood the fight against the Void Kings. And maybe, just maybe, he could help them win. As the ship sailed through the stars, the Earthling knew that his journey was far from over. The road ahead was dangerous and uncertain, but now he had purpose. The rebellion was counting on him, and he wasn't going to let them down. The Earthling's journey with the rebels had only just begun, and already everything was changing. He had learned that there was more to his mission than he ever imagined. The rebellion was strong, made up of warriors from different planets, each with their own unique skills. They had all been fighting for years, trying to stop the Void Kings from returning to power, and now the Earthling was part of it. Captain Lyra and the other leaders in the rebellion wasted no time in preparing him for what was to come. The Earthling had never been trained to fight. He was an ordinary person, used to living a peaceful life. But now, he had to learn how to survive in a world filled with danger, how to use the strange powers he had discovered within himself. The first day of training was overwhelming. He was taught how to use weapons, blasters, swords, and other advanced technology. The Earthling struggled to hold the blasters steady, his hands shaking as he tried to aim. He was no fighter, and it showed. But Lyra was patient. "You have the ability inside you," she told him. "You just need to trust yourself. We'll help you unlock it." It wasn't just physical training. The Earthling also had to learn about the Void Kings and their dark powers. He discovered that the Kings had once ruled the universe using a mysterious force called the Void. The Void was a dark, almost magical energy that could destroy entire planets. And now, the Void Kings were coming back to reclaim their empire. The days passed. The Earthling grew stronger. He began to understand the power inside him. The stone the stranger had given him was more than just a piece of glowing rock. It was a key, a link to the Void itself. And somehow, he could control it. When he focused, he could feel the void flowing through him, giving him strength. But it wasn't easy. The void was dangerous, and it took all of his willpower to keep it from consuming him. One day, during a training session, the Earthling was asked to practice using the void in a controlled environment. He stood in the middle of a large chamber, facing a group of rebel trainers. They stood back, waiting for him to make the first move. He could feel the energy rising inside him, swirling like a storm. With a deep breath, he reached out, calling upon the void. At first, nothing happened, but then, with a sudden surge, the air around him twisted. A dark shadow formed in the center of the room. The Earthling's heart raced as the shadow grew larger. It was the void, alive and powerful. He focused harder, and the shadow began to fade. Slowly, it shrank back into nothingness. The Earthling opened his eyes and exhaled sharply. The room was silent. Lyra stepped forward, a look of approval on her face. "You did it," she said. "You've learned to control it." The Earthling felt a wave of relief wash over him. He had done it. He had unlocked the power within him. But it wasn't over yet. The training had just begun. Now, he had to learn how to fight the Void Kings, how to use his new abilities in battle. It would take time, and the stakes were higher than ever. But for the first time since he left Earth, the Earthling felt a sense of purpose. He wasn't just an ordinary person anymore. He was part of something bigger, a rebellion that was fighting for the survival of the universe, and no matter how hard it got, he knew he couldn't stop now. The Void Kings were coming, and he was ready to face them. The Earthling's training was far from over, but the universe was no longer waiting. The Void Kings had returned, and their darkness spread quickly across the galaxy. The Earthling and the rebels could feel the power of the Kings growing stronger each day. It wasn't just the battles they had fought in training. It was real now. The fate of the universe was at stake. The Earthling stood on the bridge of the rebel ship, staring out into the vastness of space. The stars seemed dimmer now, as if the darkness of the void had already begun to seep into every corner of the galaxy. The Void Kings were ruthless, and their return meant chaos and destruction for everyone who opposed them. Captain Lyra walked up behind him. "They're coming," she said, her voice steady but heavy with concern. "We need to act fast. The Void Kings will stop at nothing to reclaim their throne." The Earthling nodded silently, his hands gripping the railing. He had trained for this, but nothing could prepare him for the reality of facing the Void Kings. The stories the rebels had shared made them sound invincible, creatures of unimaginable power who could bend reality to their will. What chance did he have against them? "Are you ready?" Lyra asked, her eyes meeting his. He didn't have an answer. How could he be ready? How could anyone be ready for what was coming? The ship jolted suddenly, and an alarm blared across the deck. "Incoming! Enemy ships!" shouted one of the crew members. The Earthling's heart raced. The Void King's forces had found them. "Take your positions," Lyra commanded. The crew scrambled to their stations, and the Earthling was handed a blaster. It felt heavier than ever before, the weight of the situation pressing down on him. He had never fought in a real battle before, but this time there was no turning back. As the rebel ship entered the battlefield, the Earthling saw them, massive ships, dark as the void itself, gliding through space like shadows. The Void King's army was here. They were ready to strike. The Earthling's fingers tightened around his blaster. He wasn't just fighting for himself anymore. He was fighting for everyone who depended on him. The first wave of enemy ships came at them fast. The rebel ship fired back, its weapons lighting up the dark sky. Explosions filled the air, sending pieces of debris flying in all directions. The Earthling shot at the incoming ships, his aim unsteady at first. But as he focused, his training kicked in. His hands were steady, and he fired with precision, hitting his targets. But the Void King's army was too strong. The rebel ship was hit hard, the hull shaking under the force of the attack. The Earthling felt the floor beneath him tremble. They were losing ground. "Hold on!" Lyra shouted. We need to get to the command center and launch the final strike. The Earthling followed her, feeling a mix of fear and determination. They had one chance to stop the Void Kings, and it was now. They reached the command center, and the Earthling took a seat at one of the control panels. His fingers hovered over the controls. This was the moment he had been training for. The fleet of enemy ships was closing in. The Earthling felt the power of the void stirring within him, like a storm ready to break. He took a deep breath, focusing on the energy inside him. With a single thought, he released it, unleashing a wave of dark power toward the enemy fleet. For a moment, time seemed to stop. The energy surged through the ships, and explosions erupted all around them. The Void King's ships were scattered, their power weakening. But the battle wasn't over yet. The Earthling could feel their leader, the Void King, somewhere out there, watching. The real fight was still to come. The battle had been intense, but the Earthling knew it was only the beginning. After defeating the Void King's fleet, the rebels had gained some ground, but there was still a long way to go. The Earthling's heart was heavy with the weight of the lives lost during the fight. He had never thought he would be part of a war, and now it seemed like the universe itself was on the line. As the days passed, the Earthling and his allies prepared for the next strike. They were getting closer to the Void King's stronghold, the heart of their power. The rebels had gathered. Their forces and everything was set for a final attack. The Earthling felt a sense of urgency in the air. Everyone knew that the Void Kings were stronger than ever, and if they didn't act soon, it could be too late. But just as the rebels were about to launch their assault, something unexpected happened. Late one night, as the Earthling sat alone in his room, he heard footsteps approaching. The door opened, and a familiar figure entered. It was one of the rebel leaders, Jarek, a trusted member of their group. He had always been by their side, fighting alongside them, making plans, and offering support. The Earthling looked up, surprised to see him. "Jarek," the Earthling asked, "what are you doing here? The mission is about to start." Jarek gave him a tight smile, but there was something off about it. His eyes didn't look the same. The Earthling felt a strange sense of unease in his stomach. "I need to tell you something," Jarek said, his voice low. "You're not the only one who can stop the Void Kings." The Earthling raised an eyebrow. "What are you talking about?" Jarek stepped closer, his face growing serious. "I've been working with the Void Kings. I've always known that they would come back. The universe is weak, and they're the only ones who can restore balance. The rebellion's mission is pointless. You're all just throwing away your lives for nothing." The Earthling's heart dropped. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. Jarek, the one person he had trusted, the one person who had fought beside him, was working for the enemy. You betrayed us," the Earthling asked, his voice filled with shock and anger. Jarek's face remained calm. "I didn't betray anyone. I'm doing what's necessary. The Void Kings will bring order to the chaos. They are the true rulers of the universe. You're just a pawn in this fight." The Earthling stepped back, his mind racing. How could he have been so blind? He had trusted Jarek completely, and now this, his closest ally, had been a traitor all along. It felt like the ground beneath him was falling away. Everything he had fought for, everything he had believed in, was now in question. Before the Earthling could react, Jarek reached into his coat and pulled out a small device. With a flick of his wrist, he activated it, sending a signal to the Void King's forces. The rebel base shook as alarms blared. The traitor had just signaled the enemy. "They'll be here soon," Jarek said coldly. "I've already set the plan in motion. You can't stop it." The Earthling felt a surge of anger and betrayal, but he couldn't waste any more time. He had to warn the others. Without another word, he turned and ran toward the control room. His heart raced as he passed through the dark corridors, his mind spinning. How could Jarek have done this? How could someone they trusted betray them so completely? As the Earthling reached the control room, explosions rocked the base. The Void. King's forces were attacking. The Earthling had no time to waste. He had to stop them, even if it meant risking everything. The rebel base was under siege. The Earthling could hear the sounds of battle echoing through the halls. There was no turning back now. The fight for the galaxy's future had become even more personal. The Earthling stood at the edge of the battlefield, staring at the ruins of the rebel base. The betrayal of Jarek still weighed heavily on his mind, but there was no time for grief. The Void Kings were coming, and the Earthling had to face them, no matter what. The rebel forces had scattered, their once strong base now nothing more than a battleground. The Earthling could hear the sounds of battle raging in the distance, the roar of enemy ships echoing in the sky. The Void King's army was closing in, and time was running out. With Lyra and the remaining rebels by his side, the Earthling boarded, the last remaining ship. It was their only chance to stop the Void Kings once and for all. He didn't know what lay ahead, but he couldn't let the universe fall into darkness. Not now. As the ship zoomed through space, the Earthling felt the power of the Void stirring inside him. It was like a storm, wild and untamed, ready to break free. He had learned to control it, but it was still dangerous. The Void could easily consume him if he wasn't careful. But now there was no turning back. The rebel ship neared the heart of the Void King's stronghold. A massive fortress, dark and imposing, floated in the middle of a dying star. It was a place of power and fear, where the Void Kings had once ruled the galaxy. Now it was their last stand. As the ship entered the fortress's atmosphere, the Earthling could feel the darkness pressing down on him. The air was thick with energy, and the void seemed to wrap around them, making every breath feel heavier. This was the place where it would all end. Lyra gave him a final look, her expression determined. "We're almost there. Are you ready?" The Earthling nodded, though his heart was pounding. "I don't know if I'm ready, but I have to do this." The ship landed in the center of the fortress, its engines roaring to a stop. The Earthling felt the coldness of the void seep into his bones as he stepped out, his weapon in hand. The final battle was about to begin. Ahead of them stood the Void Kings, towering and terrifying. They were everything the Earthling had imagined, beings of pure darkness, their eyes glowing with malice and power. The Earthling could feel their presence like a weight on his chest. They were the rulers of the void, and they had come to reclaim the universe. "You're too late," the leader of the Void Kings spoke, his voice like a thunderclap. "The universe will bow to us again. No one can stop us now." The Earthling stepped forward, his fists clenched. "I'm not afraid of you," he said, though his voice shook with the weight of the moment. "I'm not afraid of the void. I will stop you." The Void Kings laughed, a chilling sound that echoed through the fortress. The Earthling could feel the power of the void rising inside him, but he kept his focus. He had come this far. He couldn't back down now. The battle began with a rush of energy, the Earthling using the power of the void to strike at the Kings. But the Void Kings were powerful, their attacks sending shockwaves through the air. The Earthling fought with all his strength, using every lesson he had learned, every ounce of power he had gained. The fight seemed to go on forever, but slowly, the Earthling began to push back the Void Kings. He could feel their power weakening, their darkness fading. He could feel the universe shifting, as if everything was coming back into balance. With one final powerful strike, the Earthling unleashed all the energy of the void, crashing it into the leader of the Void Kings. The king screamed as the darkness was shattered, his form disintegrating into nothingness. The fortress began to crumble, the Void Kings defeated. The Earthling stood victorious, breathing heavily, his body drained but filled with a sense of peace. The battle was over. The Void Kings were no more, the universe had been saved. Lyra approached him, her eyes filled with respect and admiration. "You did it. We all did it." The Earthling looked around at the crumbling fortress, his heart heavy. He had won, but the cost had been great. He had lost so much, but he had saved everything. The universe was free, and that was all that mattered. Now, the Earthling stood amidst the ruins of the fallen fortress, the echoes of battle still lingering in the air. The Void Kings had been defeated. The universe, which had been shrouded in fear and darkness for so long, was now free. But even as the stars seemed to shine brighter and the silence of space wrapped around him, the Earthling couldn't help but feel the weight of the cost. The victory had come with great sacrifice. He looked around, his eyes scanning the destruction that had once been a powerful stronghold. The Void Kings were gone, but the aftermath of their reign was still visible. Their darkness had seeped into every corner of the galaxy, and it would take time for the universe to heal. There was no going back to the way things were before. Captain Lyra walked up to him, her face weary but relieved. "You did it," she said, her voice quiet but full of respect. "You defeated them. The Void Kings are no more." The Earthling nodded, his chest heavy with a mix of emotions. He had done what he set out to do. He had stopped the Void Kings from taking over. But the journey had changed him. He was no longer the same person who had left his home behind. The power of the void still lingered inside him, and he knew that it would never truly leave. "I couldn't have done it without all of you," the Earthling said, his voice hoarse. "We did this together." Lyra smiled faintly. "We couldn't have done it without you. You're the one who carried the weight of this mission." The Earthling didn't respond. He had become something more than human, something tied to the void, and it scared him. The power he had tapped into had saved the universe, but it had also changed him in ways he didn't fully understand. He turned his attention to the glowing stone in his hand. It had been with him since the beginning, the mysterious object that had connected him to the void. It had guided him, given him the strength to face impossible odds, but now, as the battle ended, he knew what he had to do. The Earthling walked to the edge of the ruins, where the remnants of the Void King's power swirled like a dark storm. With a deep breath, he held the stone in his hands and focused all his energy into it. He could feel the void within him, that dangerous power, swirling around him like a storm. But he knew he couldn't keep it. With a final, forceful movement, he crushed the stone in his hands. The energy that had been building inside him exploded outward, a surge of power that ripped through the fortress. The storm of the void dissipated, leaving only silence in its wake. The Earthling felt the power leave him, and for the first time, in what felt like forever, he was free. Lyra approached him cautiously. "Is it done?" she asked. The Earthling nodded. "Yes. The void is gone, and with it, the power that came with it. I've let it go." They stood in silence, looking out at the stars. The Earthling had saved the universe, but he had paid a heavy price. He had given up the power that had made him stronger than he ever thought possible, but it was a price he was willing to pay. "I'm going home," the Earthling said finally, his voice steady. "I've done what I needed to do. Now, I need to find peace." Lyra gave him a small, understanding smile. "You deserve it. You've earned it." As the Earthling turned and began his journey back to Earth, he knew that his life would never be the same. He had saved the universe, but he had also discovered something important about himself. The greatest battles weren't always fought with weapons. Sometimes they were fought with the strength to let go and the courage to return home. The stars now shone a little brighter as the Earthling sailed toward the life he had once known, knowing that he had truly changed the universe and himself forever.